The saying goes, out with the old and in with the new. But is that really always the best course of action? GameMasters here, and today we are going to take our first look at the new 2024 version of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Before we jump too far into it, though, I do need to state up front a couple of things. This review copy was sent to me from Wizards, and while I also have a store-bought copy, for purposes of today's review, I've got this video ticked that it contains promotional material. I also need to point out that as of October 15th, the material here was under an embargo. But now that it's November 1st, we're a good 2 weeks beyond that embargo, so I'm no longer bound to it, or at least its restrictions. That said, however, I still have to abide by 3 additional restrictions. The first one, I cannot publish footage, images, or distribute files that show an entire chapter of this book end to end. This means that I am not allowed to show you every single page of every single chapter, which is again iterated under the second restriction that I cannot publish footage, images, or distribute files that display the entire book, page by page, from beginning to end. In other words, I cannot do a full page-by-page turn. The third restriction states that I cannot upload or distribute PDF content of any kind. I'm more than happy to abide by all of that. I've never been a fan of full page-through flip-throughs anyways, but they do provide to me what I can do. Use this book as a visual asset for your content, for reference, illustration, or discussion in accordance to fair use. And that is exactly what I intend to do today. GameMasters started off as a brick-and-mortar store in Memphis, Tennessee, and when I had that store, I always welcomed folks to come in and browse to see if the products that we had on the shelf was any good. A lot of those friendly neighborhood game stores have closed up shop over the years, mine included, which forces us to purchase books like this online. But there is rarely a way to actually see what is inside those books. While I feel that the price point is fair enough, I do want to be able to check out the guts of what is being sold. I want to see if it's cool enough to work at my table. I don't like buying blind, and this major shift to online purchasing without offering a way to look at what's inside is exactly that, buying blind. I want this Game Masters channel to be the eyes that we all once had when you could walk into a game store and give a book a good thumb through, and while we cannot do a page-by-page flip through, by all rights, we are free to do a thumb through. I apologize for such a long intro, but with how WotC has been as of late, I felt a disclaimer needed to be said. So, with that said, let's jump on in and check it out. I've been teasing that we would call this edition 5.5. Some are for it, others prefer 5R. Regardless, what I can say is that the cover looks pretty good. I'll be doing a live stream soon where we go over every edition's DMG cover just to compare them, so be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss that video. We also have the collector's cover that features Loth, the demon queen of spiders, on the front, and has kind of a foily shine to it. Looks really good. And we also have the Dungeon Master screen. I'm not going to look in it in that Dungeon Master screen in this video, but if there's enough interest, let me know down in the comments and we'll take a look at it in a separate video. The first thing I want to check out, however, is the disclaimer, if I can find it. Okay, and there is not one. That's disappointing. We have the table of contents, which have since been posted online, so no major spoiler there. And while I don't want to do a page-by-page turn-through, I do want to show you guys the first page, the basics. And keep in mind that this new DMG is really designed for the new to the game Dungeon Master. Sure, there are some things in here that a seasoned DM might get some use out of, but it's really geared towards the new of the new player turned DM. For example, there's this little gray section that details what all is new in the 2024 version. It talks about how the layout has been reorganized, how the information has been expanded, and that elements within this book have been designed to replace the elements in older books. It goes on to detail sound advice, that each chapter is going to present to the DM key information and advice on how to deal with a specific situation. There are also tracking sheets, and when we run across one of those, we'll pause the video and take a look at that a little bit in depth on how those are to be used and set up. It goes into providing examples on advice and on how to create encounters and adventures, as well as for creating full-on campaigns. And it also provides some nice maps in the latter pages of the appendix, Appendix B. Magic items are also found in this new DMG, which is traditional. This section will go over some of the changes made to the magic items, as well as the new ones that they've added and included, as well as how to create them. Then you have the section on Bastions, which is something that we've been using since, the early AD&D days. Only we called them castles, strongholds, even player-run towns. But I'll go over my view on the Bastion rules when we get to that section, as I've got kind of an opinion on that. Also included is the lore glossary. This is going to provide to the DM just enough information to cover the basics of some pivotal figures in the Dungeons & Dragons game, as well as some important locations from its history. Again, this is not going to be a page-by-page flip-through, but I do feel this section is an important highlight to the book, as it details out what rule books you may need, this DMG being one of them, but also the Player's Handbook and, of course, the Monster Manual that's going to be coming out in 2025. Next, you have to decide if you are going to be that dungeon master or if you prefer to be the player. It suggests where to find players, it explains what dice are needed, and I really like this guy's artwork. His little caption reads, "What do you do when the die lands cocked? See the end of this chapter for advice." And I think that's kind of cool. I can't think of a previous DMG that really delved into resolving that issue. Let's go ahead and thumb through a bit, check out some... so I got to gravitate to this one. We've got a dragon arriving in the middle of a fight against some zombies. And I got to admit, the artwork in this is a fair bit darker and less cartoony than the Player's Handbook. And I do like that. This is a section in the chapter for the DM's Toolbox. Looks like this covers doors and various things you might throw at players as they explore a dungeon. For example, on the Dungeon Quirks table, should you roll a 65, this would be a section intended as a death trap to eliminate any creature that enters, perhaps to guard a treasure or to harvest souls for a necromantic rite. So it's kind of cool if giving it a bit of flavor to your dungeon creations. Flipping a good chunk, and we land on Bobby and Hank narrowly avoiding being hit by poison darts. Of course, poison darts are an excellent low-level dungeon trap. This also shows the stats of those poison needles, how the trap can be triggered, and what it will do. But it also includes suggestions as to how to avoid setting it off to begin with. Of course, it also shows what damage it can do should it hit. This is a small section in Chapter 5 that goes over advice for creating campaigns and provides some brief information about the various settings found within D&D. For example, Eberron reads, "In the aftermath of a deadly war, magically advanced nations rebuild as a Cold War threatens everlasting peace." Well, that sounds familiar. But I really like that super brief explanation of the various settings, as it gives you a basis for where you might want to set up shop and create your own campaign. On a side note, I do wish that in the future they show or produce larger books that go into a much more expanded history of these settings. I always liked those in the AD&D version, and I would greatly hope that they do that in this 5.5 version. Oh, here we have a fun woolly mammoth. Again, I like the artwork because it's just not cartoony. Oh, and one thing I want to point out and show. So we have the world of Greyhawk. This is a campaign setting, but it's more of a sandbox setting. They're providing to the DM the information, but are letting you craft up the adventure itself. They provide the map of the city of Greyhawk, as well as a larger map section of nearby environments that details locations like the Blackfair Manor, Elmshire, Mistmarsh, Peculiar Manor, and Stonefort, which are all fun locations in Greyhawk for the DM to populate and let the players explore. Let's also take a look at a tracking sheet. Okay, this is the magic item tracker, and each sheet is broken down a little differently, but this one provides ways to track magic items that the players have found along the way. Let me move this book so it kind of lays flat here. Okay. Okay, so it's broken down into levels and then by common, uncommon, and rare and so forth. Then you have the rest of the magic items in the DMG. And we can also find the rules on magic item crafting, which is something we'll check out in a future video as a deep dive. So again, subscribe so that you don't miss that particular video. One magic item that you won't find in this 2024 DMG is Big B's thumbs up. But you can cast it by giving this video a thumbs up, and its magic causes the video to be seen favorably by the YouTube gods. Plus, it refreshes with each new video, regardless if you've taken a long rest or not. We do have in this new DMG the Deck of Many Things, and a quick glance shows it to be the traditional one that we've all seen, but I'm going to look closer at it in the near future to see how it compares to the Book of Many Things version of the deck, only because we know that some of the items, magic items, in this book have been updated, and I'm just kind of curious to see if this was one of them. Again, I really like the artwork in here. It's minimal, doesn't hog everything. It's not filler, and it leaves room for good words and descriptions. Oh, and look, here's the new stat block for the Avatar of Death from the Deck of Many Things. That's pretty cool. Potion's artwork is cool too. We've got Potion of Giant Strength, Potion of Healing, Potion of Pugilism, Potion of Invisibility, and I like that it's clear, and a Potion of Vitality. Let's check out the Potion of Pugilism. It reads, after you drink this potion, each unarmed strike you make deals an extra 1d6 force damage on a hit. This effect lasts 10 minutes. This potion is a thick green fluid that tastes like spinach. I like spinach. More cool looking magic items. Robe of Stars. That was always cool looking. And we've got the Rod of Absorption. More items and weapons. Oh, and some maps. Wait. I almost skipped a small section. Give me a second. Let me find it. Bastions. I'm majorly on the fence about Bastions. This is a section that is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's purely for the players. Sure, it's the DM's option to let it in the game, but the rule set in this section is 100% for players. I can only think that they being WotC, of course, did this as a marketing move in an attempt to get players to purchase the Dungeon Master's Guide, just to have access to this. Others may see it a different way, but that's kind of how I see it. As for their function, the Bastion function, we've had things like this going all the way back to 2nd edition. Players have always had castles, keeps, strongholds, even full-on villages, towns, as well as dungeons that they would spend their gold on. I mean, I suppose providing some rules for how players can get a home base and what they can do there was needed for 5th edition, but this is something that we've been homebrewing for decades. But again, this book is designed for that newer DM, and I'm trying my best to maintain and base my view as that perspective as I look through this book. Anyways, Bastions give to the players a home base of operations, a physical location to store goods and use as a point to enter the world and explore and adventure. We briefly looked at the included maps, and I want to jump back to them. While we get maps in various adventures, the ones included here are great generic ones, and really with what all is provided in this 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, you are getting everything that you need to be able to create up your own custom adventure and realm. Oh, I better blur the index here. I'm not going to take a look at this large fold-out map. It's going to be the main... hold on, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's going to be a larger version of the main map to the Greyhawk world. And I'm not a fan of tearing the maps out of my books. I just don't like it and would much rather have preferred for it to be a loose map to begin with. But I get why they attach it, mainly just so that it doesn't flop out in transit and get lost upon the purchase of the book. And then we have the back of the book, and you can see here that the cover price is suggested at being $49.99, which, as I stated about the Player's Handbook, seems to me to be a decent intro price for a core book that has 384 pages, which the original 5th edition DMG had 320 pages, so this one is a touch bigger. For those curious, if I can get this without knocking over the camera, for those curious, the collector's version of the DMG has the exact same pages within and is also retailing for $49.99. Of course, it's got the shiny foil cover on it as well. And there you have it, folks. This is our 100% allowed, no risk taken thumb through of the new 2024 Dungeon Masters Guide. And I want to thank you all for watching. Hang out while I do my wrap up because I've got a few more points to make. But I also want to thank all of my channel and Patreon supporters as their contributions to the channel have been spectacular, and I cannot thank them enough. I'll post links down below if you'd like to throw some support to the channel. I'll also say this of the 2024 Dungeon Masters Guide. It's got some fun elements in it, and I am of the honest opinion that if you are an older DM, there will likely be very little within that you'll really need to have. One of the only things I can think of that would be something that I'd be interested in, really, would be the updated magic item description. But aside from that, the advice given, we're likely already dealing with that and have dealt with that numerous times. Take that one example of what to do if the die roll's cocked. In this new DMG, it asks, when a die rolls on the floor or lands cocked against a book, do you re-roll it? This book answers that by having the DM and players talk about the exact situation, come up with an answer, and adopt it as a house rule. And guess what? That's the right answer to that issue. And that's what I mean by an experienced DM won't necessarily need to hear that from this book. But a new DM may not exactly know that it is okay to come up with a house rule specifically for that situation. Of course, there are other questions and situations that pop up in here too. That's just one of the examples. I'm going to take some time to go over this book and read it chapter to chapter, and I've got several more videos planned to make, so be sure to bookmark this playlist as it's only going to grow as I add more to it. In this thumb through, what stood out to you the most? If you are an experienced DM, did you see anything that appeals to you? If you are a newer DM or are thinking of getting into Dungeons & Dragons, do you plan on picking this book up? Talk to me down in the comments, and until next our paths cross, may the campaigns you create be full of Dungeons and Dragons.